Young Turks now has audio, the TYT Audio Network, podcasts of some of your favorite shows and new shows, including one with Nina Turner, former Ohio State Senator. She's going to do We the People with Nina Turner, talking about equality and justice and seeing that through the eyes of regular Americans who are affected by politics and policy. Everybody check it out at tyt.com/audio.
The Trump administration has rolled out their anti-opioid epidemic commercials, and they're getting mixed reviews. Let's first take a look at one of these ads.
First time I tried Vicodin, it was laying around my mom's house. And then I kept taking them whenever I could get them. I didn't know they'd be this addictive. I didn't know how far I'd go to get more.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth.
So there was that. There was at least one big fan of the rollout. That's President Trump himself, who said this of the ads. Let's take a look at this clip.
I've been very strongly in favor of spending a lot of money on great commercials showing how bad it is, so that kids seeing those commercials during the right shows on television or wherever, the internet, when they see these commercials, say, I don't want any part of it. That's the least expensive thing we can do, where you scare them from ending up like the people in the commercials.
And they are truly graphic and scary. There are 4 ads that they're rolling out, and in each of these 4 ads, they depict the true story of someone hurting themselves to get more pain medication. A little bit more on just the backstory of these ads. The White House Office of National Drug Control Policy partnered with 2 nonprofits, the Truth Initiative and the Ad Council, in order to create the advertisements. That ad space will cost $30 million, according to an official with the Ad Council. And the White House told reporters on Thursday they will only spend $384,000 on the campaign. The rest will be aided by donations. Organizers reportedly tested over 150 different images before settling on the 4 advertisements chosen. No, Trump obviously really liked them, but there are a lot of other people that are saying that these are not effective advertisements. Who does not know at this moment, after 22 years of an epidemic, that these drugs are addictive, said Keith Humphreys, a drug policy expert at Stanford University and former senior policy advisor for the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy. They don't give information. They are just trying to terrify everyone, and I think people are already terrified. This is reminiscent of the Just Say No campaigns, and I think that there has been enough evidence to show that that actually really backfired, and a lot of experts are saying that these White House ads are going to do the same. You guys have seen the ads, or at least one of them that we just played. What is your response to this?
I mean, this isn't even a Band-Aid on a gushing wound. The ad that we did watch completely misleads people into, it shows that this administration does not understand. They fundamentally misunderstand, maybe purposely so, how this epidemic came about in the first place. Oh, Trump with his big talk about how he's going to be this tough guy on the pharmaceutical companies. This is a problem that emerged from pharmaceutical companies that pushed doctors to overprescribe incredibly addictive opioids. And people would get prescribed these drugs for legitimate reasons, for legitimate pain that they were suffering from an invasive surgery or an injury. And they would get addicted because that's what happens with opioids. They get addicted. And so it doesn't happen because there's some black guy who's stealing drugs from his mom and then he gets addicted that way. No. That is not indicative of the trend that the country experienced with opioids. And by the way, in case you didn't know, this is a problem that has disproportionately impacted poor white communities. Just want to put that out there.
When I saw the black guy, I had that same thought that Anna just articulated was, wow, really? I mean, statistically, it's a white problem. I mean, that's not to say that guy, who they are depicting dramatically, wasn't an African American. I'm just saying that it was an odd choice. Now, maybe the other ones do.
Yeah, the other ones do depict more varied demographic. Okay, but in the one that I showed, yes.
So maybe, to be fair, jumping on the wrong thing, but of course, opioids are out there in such great numbers because of the pharmaceuticals and their stranglehold on our culture. The real answer to this isn't ads. Look, I'm not against those ads. It's like, oh, it's just a total waste of time. I don't know. Maybe it gets
It's
through
a
on
waste
some
of money.
level.
No,
okay.
it doesn't. It doesn't.
So,
like I
but
went
it's
through,
certainly not the answer. It's not a real. It's not really addressing the problem. I mean, it's again to what you were saying, Anna, that it's not even a Band-Aid. I mean, the problem, the intervention that's required, the things that have to happen to really begin to stem this tide are far more substantial than even all the ads you want to produce, from now until the end of time.
If I were someone who were addicted to opioids and I saw those commercials, I would be insulted because it makes you seem as though you're this irresponsible person, you're just an addict who can't take control of your own life, and that you'll go to extreme measures just to get your hands on this drug to get your fix. That is not what happened to the vast majority of Americans who are addicted to prescription painkillers. It happened because of a lack of regulation, pharmaceutical companies that have run amok, and what these people need is not to be demonized, okay? I don't care what the race is, that doesn't matter at all. They need treatment, they need help, and that is not what they're getting here. Fear-mongering is not going to help anything. I went through the DARE program throughout grade school, and guess what? I did drugs. I didn't do drugs throughout school, but I ended up trying marijuana. That didn't stop me, and there was all sorts of fear-mongering about marijuana. The DARE program was a giant waste of federal resources. And that is exactly what we're seeing here. It is not even a Band-Aid for this gushing wound. It is nothing more than Trump making it appear that he cares about the situation. He doesn't care. If he genuinely did, he would create treatment programs that really help these people in addition to pushing for regulation.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Anna. Something that I keep being reminded of is who does this ad play well to? And it plays well to people in Congress over the age of 50 who have probably never firsthand experienced any sort of opioid addiction or dependence in their lifetime. And they would watch and be like, oh yeah, that would really scare me. I'm never gonna touch Percocet. So worked on me, so that's probably good. But when you look at the experts who have been extensively interviewed, they say this absolutely has the adverse effect. And again, pointing to the Just Say No program, saying no has never been really the core problem that we're here to talk about.
So just say no to who? The doctor who's prescribing you this medication for the extreme pain that you're feeling? Is that who you say no to?
Yeah.
I mean, and remember, there were studies recently that showed that these opioids were no better at treating pain compared to other over-the-counter, non-addictive pain medications. Look, there are serious issues with pharmaceutical companies. Trump said that he would hold their feet to the fire. Again, his tough guy language never really gets implemented when it comes to those in positions of power. It never gets implemented when it comes to corporations and, the people that he gave Hillary Clinton crap for. The same corporations that he felt were controlling Hillary Clinton. They're controlling you, homeboy.
So my final question for you guys, a tone-deaf ad like this that just really, I think we can agree, misses the mark. Is this intentional or is it ignorant? Is it his intent to just sort of smoke and mirrors away from big pharma, as we've talked about, or is it just ignorant in that the advisors surrounding him are not giving him the information he needs to make an informed decision on a problem that he says he deeply cares about?
I think the evidence is pretty clear as to what's needed. I mean, this has been a problem that has been talked about and reviewed and statistically analyzed in many, many different ways through the past administration. This didn't just happen when Trump took office. We're awash in these opioids for the reasons that have been articulated here already, that big pharma has got a stranglehold on everybody. And so the answers here, so whether or not Trump is willfully in denial of the answers, I don't think he cares. I really don't think he cares. I think, bring me something to show that let's get on top of this. Come on, bring me some. I think he's completely surface on this. He has no clue, nor does he have any. He's not anxious to get a clue on it.
2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below. Then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.